All right, welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're going to move beyond just memorizing boring grammar rules. We're talking about making choices when you speak and write, choices that can totally change your tone and what you're trying to say. So let's open up that linguistic toolkit, shall we?
So think about this for a second. Must you go versus do you have to go? I mean, they're both correct, right? But they just feel completely different, don't they? One sounds kind of formal, maybe a little pushy. The other one, well, that's just what a friend would say. And you know what? That difference is not an accident. It's a choice.
And that really gets to the heart of it. This is all about the communicator's choice. This is not about getting the right answer on a test. Nope. It's about building out your toolkit so you can always pick the perfect tool for the job, whether you're aiming for formal, super casual, direct, or maybe something a little softer. Okay, so let's meet the two main tools we're going to be working with today. Think of them as two different instruments in your kit. On one side, we have the classics, the traditional modal verbs, and on the other, we have the more modern, more flexible phrasal modal verbs. First up, we've got the modal verbs. These are like the classic, sharp, all-in-one tool in your kit. They're just single words, you know them, can, must, will, should. They get right to the point. A sentence like, she can speak Spanish is just clean, efficient, done. And then you've got these guys, phrasal modals. These are your modern, specialized, super flexible tools. They're little phrases made of a few words that do the same job as a modal, like be able to, have to, or be going to. So, she is able to solve the problem. It gets the same idea across, but the construction is just different. All right, so we've met the team. Now let's actually put them side by side and see how they stack up. When we break down how they're built and how they act, you're going to see what makes each one so unique and, honestly, so powerful in its own way. Ready for the showdown? We're going to look at a few key things. Their basic form, how they change tenses or don't, how you say no with them, and just the general level of formality they bring to the table. This is going to make it super clear why you'd pick one over the other. Now, check this out, because this is probably the biggest difference right here. It all comes down to tense. Modal verbs like can or must, they're kind of frozen in time. You can't say, I will must go. It just sounds wrong, right? But with phrasal modals, that first verb, like have in have to, is totally flexible. So you can easily say, I had to go, and put that obligation in the past. That flexibility, it is an absolute game changer. So, we know what they are, we've seen the nuts and bolts of how they work, but that's just the blueprint. Let's get to the important part, a real-world field guide for when and why you should use each one if you want to sound natural in modern American English. Here's a pretty solid rule of thumb. In everyday spoken American English, you are going to hear and you're going to use phrasal modals way, way more often. Phrases like have to and be going to are the real workhorses of conversation. The classic modals like must and should, they tend to pop up more in formal situations, like in academic writing or on official signs. Let's look at a few examples head to head. For ability, both of these are perfectly fine. She can swim is quick, it's direct. She is able to swim might be used when you want to emphasize that capability, especially if it was a struggle. Like, after months of lessons, she is finally able to swim. See the difference? Okay, now necessity. This one's a biggie. You must wear a seatbelt is exactly what you'd read on a sign or in a legal document. But you are far more likely to hear your friend lean over and say, hey, you have to wear a seatbelt. Have to is pretty much the default for necessity in conversation.
And what about possibility? Well, it might rain is a simple, everyday prediction. But it is likely to rain, that feels a little more analytical, right? A little more formal. It's what you'd expect a weather forecaster to say when they're pointing out a chart. It's the same idea, but the choice just subtly shifts the tone.
So, let's boil it all down. Basically, reach for those classic modals when you need to be quick and direct. Grab the phrasal modals when you need that awesome tense flexibility or when you want a softer, more conversational vibe. And for sure, the biggest takeaway? In casual American English, have to and be going to are your absolute best friends. Okay, let's bring it all home. Because getting this stuff isn't just about passing a test or sounding correct. It's about taking a huge step toward becoming a more precise, more conscious, and just a more effective communicator. It really is about mastering the craft of language. So if you take one thing away today, let it be this. It's not about memorizing a bunch of rules. It's about making conscious choices. Every time you pick between must and have to, or can and be able to, you're making a deliberate choice about your tone and your clarity. You're in the driver's seat, and that's a pretty powerful place to be.
And that leaves us with one last thing to chew on. Now that you see this difference as a choice, what other so-called grammar rules out there aren't really rules at all, but just more opportunities for you to shape your message? It's something to think about. Thanks so much for joining me for The Explainer.